So what is hydrology? Well, it's the study, characterization of water-generated systems. Just where does the water come from in a watershed? Where does it go? Characterizations can include quantity, quality, and flow rate. So those are the main things we're interested in hydrology. Quantity, how much water ran off on that flood event or that precipitation event? The quality, that means things such as can be related to water quality, but in terms of what kind of rainfall, its distribution, that's related to quality. And then the flow rate, that is how fast the water is going. And this all characterization can be related to what we call surface water and groundwater. Surface water is rivers, ponds, reservoirs, lakes. Groundwater is everything below the ground. Obviously, that's what it is. That's why it's called groundwater. What hydrology is not, we're not going to talk about these things. In fact, we do have a two-part series on hydraulics, but hydraulics is different from hydrology. Hydrology is not the study of weather or weather forecast. That is a part called meteorology. But a good hydrologist is very cognizant of the mechanics of meteorology because they use that information as part of their hydrologic analysis. Also, it's not the study of water flow, depths, and velocity. That's hydraulics. Right? Once the water gets into the river, it's considered hydraulic. This first part, part one, is related to the first basics of hydrology. And then part two, we'll get a little bit more detail and some information that might be of more interest to the advanced hydrologist information. Course outline, this is again part one. What's hydrology? We're going to talk about that. Hydrologic cycle, everyone's heard about the hydrologic cycle but didn't really know the specifics of it. Then we have what's called return period and probability. We'll go over things such as how do you get the 100-year flood? What is the 100-year flood? What's the chances of a 100-year flood happening at a certain point in time or over a certain period of time? So we'll talk a little bit about that because everyone's very interested about that because they always hear about, oh, this huge flood came and it was a 200-year flood. Well, what does it really mean? And we'll talk a little bit about precipitation, how it's measured, how it's used in doing our computations for doing what we call runoff. That means how much rain comes off in the watershed down into the river. We'll talk about precipitation. And then synthetic storms, because synthetic storms are related to an imaginary storm. We get this imaginary storm based upon real-life data. I urge you to see part two. We'll go a little bit more detail on some of these things we talked about, and things will start coming together in your mind. The first hour and a half is always difficult because you're learning new language, new terms, new techniques. But at the end of the second part, you'll see it all kind of gathering together, and it'll all start making sense. Part two is a quick review. Go a little bit over precipitation in more detail as well as infiltration. Then talk a little bit about transformation, that is changing the excess rainfall over into a hydrograph, and we'll get a little bit on what a hydrograph is. Talk a little bit about base flow, then how we take all that transformation and move it down the river, and that's called river rerouting, and then how that routing of that hydrograph gains or loses water as it goes through the watershed.